planners, executives of major companies, or ordinary individuals on the street, his single goal is to help them understand how we can live a completely fulfilled life in every way. And by the way, Louis believes that there is no such thing as the ordinary man. Welcome, Louis. I hope I got your surname correct. How's
well,
things?
Almost. But let's not fuss too much about that.
Well, you're joining us from the Netherlands. So how's things there? We're currently in a second sort of lockdown period where we've been told to go back and work from home and such like. How's things with you?
Well, to start with, if I look outside, we've got British weather, so it's raining, yes. It's actually raining just as much over here as it does with you, I guess. But no, seriously, about the COVID, we are really, well, kind of halfway to progress to the second wave. So this is really, these are again worrying times as the economy might suffer as a consequence, not to just forget all the people who will suffer as a consequence, because it still is a dreadful disease. So yes, we are affected, and you know, there's a lot going on in this area of confusion around that what we have always thought of as being normal is now all of a sudden turned upside down. And again, this is why the topic for today will probably be very useful, because that is really about how to prioritize the things in your life that really matter to you in a way that you can do your first things first.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So today, Lou, we're going to help us explore how we can live life to the full. I think I'm going to hand over to you in a second, but for the audience out there, we want it to be as interactive as possible. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask ourselves or Louis, please put them in the Q&A down at the bottom, and we will deal with them at an appropriate time during the talk. So let's get involved, and I'd like to hand over to Louis.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Don, for inviting me. I love to grab this opportunity to speak to our UK audience. That's always great. I love to be in the UK, and one of the things that really is bothering me at the moment is that I can't be over there, at least not as much and as frequent as I would love to. But you know, it has proven to be a very good second best to do this online engagements, and it's wonderful to see that Jonathan and Dom have found this to be a great way to keep connected with their clients as well. So great. Let's dive into the subject for today, and let's look at what we're really looking at. I mean, a fulfilled life. It's such an easy thing to say, a fulfilled life, but what is it really about? What is fulfillment? That's a question that I would like to even give more context by a small presentation that I want to share with you. In just a few minutes we go through it, and I want to share my screen here. So bear with me 1 second, and here we go. So we say, well, that the challenge of life is really in the action that you take. Because if you don't take any action, then nothing will happen. At least not something that you were the architect of. We tend to say that if you do not have a plan for yourself, you always end up being part of someone else's plan. And that's not usually what we want. So another great man, John Lennon, once said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." And that's true at the same time. So at the one hand, we want to know, and we want to understand that it's important to be able to make our own plan. But as soon as you overrate your own plan, then you'll get hit by the bus, and all of a sudden other things get into action. But still, if you have no clue of your own direction, then the only chance of getting somewhere where you really want to be would be coincidentally. And maybe that's a bit too thin. So if we look at the next slide. So do you remember that you were dreaming to make a difference? To see the world? To be connected? But that wasn't even all. You were courageous. And you had imagination. And you took on big challenges. And there was more. You had talents. And you were creative. And a real entrepreneur. So what happened? You had to comply. And they simply laughed at your dreams. Well, as a consequence, you chose urgent over important. So you started to forget about the important stuff and started to act on the urgent stuff much more. But is this your life? Or would you like to get out? Away from work. Experiencing less stress. Or worries over money. Focusing on what you don't want doesn't get you what you do want. We would like you to answer these 3 questions for yourself. So, the first question would be, what would you change about your life if money was no object? And I know that you have great advisors in Jonathan and Don. And I expect that many of these questions have been asked in the whole process of financial life planning that they did with you. But still, it's a good thing to keep asking yourself these kind of questions. So if you would seriously try to answer that question, so what would you change about your life if money was really no object? Then the second question could be, so what would you change about your life if you knew you had just 5 more years to live? So all of a sudden your horizon now has shrunk to 5 years. And that's it. So how would your priority shift? What would really come higher in your priority list, and what would go down? And then last but not least, considering your life would end tomorrow, in what way would your life have been incomplete? So what is it that you would still have to do, what you still feel like, where are your talents that would go unused if you did not get to live any longer? These are heavy questions, I understand that, and it's something that it takes serious consideration. It's not something that you can do as an aside. But still, if you think about it in this way, it will help you to prioritize the things that really do matter. And we probably don't do that often enough. So the assumptions that we make on these money issues, time issues, and mortality issues, they deprive us of the energy to go for our passion. Because for money, we often think like, yeah, well, I can't do that because there isn't enough money. I can't make enough, or I don't have enough. And for the time issues, it might well be that you think really, or at least you act in a way that it looks like there will be always enough time to still do things. But sometimes people do actually see their horizon shrink to a size that they didn't expect, but still it happens. And last but not least, mortality, the fact that we have all these talents to spend in our life, but we can only spend them once. And as soon as that life is over, then you don't get to spend them anymore. So if we are careless with that, then we don't get to spend what is meaningful to us. So those assumptions that we kind of, without really thinking about it, make, deprive us of the energy to go for our passion. And when we're talking about fulfillment, that's why we started this, these slides. When we talk about fulfillment, it's usually true that when you go for your passion, there's much more fulfillment in your life. If you look at the great people in the world, the real great people in the world, then almost without exception, you can immediately say what it is that they were passionate about or are passionate about. Because they live their passion. They don't accept anything else to come in between. They live their passion, they breathe their passion, and they radiate their passion. You can feel that. It's great to be around people like that, who are so passionate about their lives. And that is often in contrast with many of the other people who sometimes even drag themselves out of bed in the morning and then go to a job that they really don't want to go to, but they feel they have to because, well, they need to make the money. And then after being drained all day by something that they didn't want to do, they get home and they are so empty that there's no energy left there to do anything else that is significant to them anyway. And that means then that the day after, the same treadmill starts all over again. And in a way that goes to create a completely empty life, which is such a waste. So if we can go for our passion, if we can put time and energy, but also if we are guided in that process to find what our passion is about, then all of a sudden new things will happen. Because if you realize what is important in your life, then you can make it happen. And okay, sure, I can hear you already say like, yeah, easy talking, but you know, we're in COVID and there are so many things that I want to do, but I can't do them because of COVID, etc., etc. And if you say that, you're right, but you're absolutely wrong as well. So that's a bit challenging maybe to put it like this, but there's always possibilities. There's always ways in which we can create things that give us fulfillment. And often it is important to know that in that process of creating that, there are alternatives. So let me bring the screen back on. And let me just explain to you just a bit of a story so you understand what I mean with that. Because I see so many people deprived of their energy right now because they feel like, oh, nothing is possible anymore. My company is going down and my job is at hazard. My health even at hazard. I can't do the things that I loved to do because I was so used to doing them in this way. So where's my passion? Where's my fulfillment? I want you to imagine for a moment that you're on the bank of a river and you're looking at the other side of the river, and you know that at the other side of the river there's this wonderful place. So the square crossover, there's this wonderful place, and in that place you know that when you're there, then the experiences are always good. It's a wonderful place to be. Great place to be. And you really long to be there because you want to have that great experiences. But you're here on this side of the river, and it's quite a strong current in that river, and it's not an easy river to just cross. You couldn't go over swimming. So now you're considering, how on earth am I going to get to the other side? Well, as usual, there are a number of options. So you could drive 15 miles back where there is a bridge, and then on the other side you would have to drive 15 miles as well, which takes quite a bit of time, and you would have to find a decent car to do so. There's also nearby a helicopter platform, which would be a great ride, but it's quite expensive. So, as it happens to be, you've always been very fond of sailing. And as you're standing there, all of a sudden you notice that right in front of you, there's this sailing boat for hire. So what an obvious choice. Of course you want to go sailing. You want to take that boat to go to the other side, to that wonderful place at the other side. Now, if you just jump on that boat and you want to go to the other side in one straight line, you know that's not going to work because it's a sailing boat. And a sailing boat, you have to take in account that there is a certain current and there are certain winds. So you have to zigzag maneuver in a way that you make best use of the wind to get to the other side. So you have to plot a course. And if you don't have that course, then you're adrift and you don't want to be adrift. So you have to think about, okay, so how am I going to use this vehicle to get to where I need to be? So there needs to be a plan there and a course. Now my question to you would be like, okay, so you just found out what the best course would be, and you're taking off, and you've just done a few inches even, and all of a sudden you notice that the current is much stronger than you had expected. So now what you do? Do you turn around and give up? And say like, okay, no, well, in that case, I can't get to the other side. Nah, of course not. The only reasonable thing to do here would be to make a new course, taking into account the actual current. Now you're taking off even further, and while you are sailing, all of a sudden the wind changes. And again, the question would be, what do you do? Give up? Do you give up? Doesn't make sense, does it? No, you simply plot a new course according to the current winds. And it might altogether take you more time to get there, and it might be more difficult to get there, but you're still heading towards that wonderful place where you need to be. Would be different if you would now all of a sudden notice that there's a big hole in the boat, and the boat is going down rapidly. So now all of a sudden you think like, okay, what am I doing here now? You might better turn around and make sure that you get back to the shore where you were safe. But even if that's happened, so apparently the boat's no longer an option. Does that mean that you now give up and you go home? No, there were alternatives. You could still decide to take that helicopter, even though you might not like spending the money. It's an alternative. It would still get you to that wonderful place B where you would have those great experiences. So what you see and what we see in the life planning work, what we see a lot is that people confuse the vehicle that they want to take with the goals that they have. After a while, they start to think that the whole thing was about the sailing. You get fixated on that strategy, because actually the boat was a strategy to get to the other side. It wasn't actually the goal, it was a strategy. But in a way, sometimes we get so fixated that we can't think of another way of getting there anymore. Because that was the only way we knew, the only way we had thought of, the only way that we felt oh, everything fits. But as a matter of fact, there are always ways. Maybe some ways have some disadvantages. Maybe they even have advantages that we don't know of yet because we didn't investigate them. So the art is to very, very clearly know what it is that you are heading for. What is that wonderful place with those wonderful experiences that you want to be at? Because as long as that is clear, you can always start to think of other alternatives, other ways of getting there. And even if the quality that you then experience would be less, because there are limitations to what we as a human being can experience in this world, then you still get to be as close to whatever it is that brings you fulfillment as you can. So there's no way COVID keeps me from experiencing the things that I need in my life. Sure, I've changed quite a few strategies in the past half year, a whole lot, and I've been quite confused quite often in the past half year about what my strategy needed to be. So that hole in the boat, that's something that I encountered quite a lot in the past half year, and that sometimes throws you off. But as long as you keep exactly clear on what it is that is on the horizon for you, what is that place where you would have those great experiences, as long as you have someone that helps you in that conversation, because it's hard to keep yourself on track with this. It's hard to verbalize it to yourself in a way that it keeps you energized and focused on what it was that you actually needed to experience. So that's why it's great if you have a skilled life planner who's capable of having that conversation with you. And then of course, in the end, everything that we do takes money as well. So it would be great if there's also a financial strategy that links in with that ways to fulfillment. So be clear that it's not so much about the strategies that we walk, but it should always be about the actual qualities that we want to invite into our lives. Those will lead to fulfillment. Let me just switch to another presentation here. One second, please. Yeah, here we go. So, oh, it's not what I want. Wrong button. Yeah, here we go. So when we are talking about life planning, then life planning is one of the ways in which we have found, I should actually say George Kinder has found. George Kinder is the founding father of the life planning movement worldwide. I have had the privilege of working together with him for decades now and giving life planning training all over the world in virtually all the continents except for Antarctica. We didn't find enough people living there yet, but you don't know, maybe that will come as well. So life planning is really the art of helping people to find that extraordinary place where these experiences are great. And place, of course, is more an analogy for whatever it is that you need in your life that will give you great sense of fulfillment, great experiences. When we think about life planning, it's really about finding what matters, helping creating a vision and a strategy, inspiring to overcome obstacles, adding the financial knowledge, and putting it into action. This sounds probably, when I put it like this and I show this slide like this, like you say, like, yeah, sure, of course, yeah, that's what we should do. But let me check with you. If you think about something that you really, really want in your life, but that you have not been able to deliver to yourself so far, would it be true that you know exactly why it is impossible? Is it maybe true that you know that that obstacle is so real that it will not be possible to do that? At least not without a lot of effort. And as long as we believe in our obstacles, it's really hard to find the time and energy within ourselves to actually execute on this, to hop onto that boat, to start the journey. Because if we feel that there's so much against it, yeah, then we get shy and we don't. So in a way, if you look at this process, this is actually the process that has been designed by George Kinder. You can see that the inspiration to overcome your obstacles is here right in the middle and not at the start of the process. So apparently we don't want to start with thinking about what is against your ideas of fulfillment. We probably want to start with finding out what really matters. So how does that place at the other side of the river look like to you? Well, where is it? And what is there to experience? To be able to feel that, to use the energy of your dream to drive your plan, rather than to take the negative energy of the obstacle and have it block everything that you would actually want to do. So that's what's so extraordinary about this process, that we start with the intrinsic motivation, finding what really, really matters. And then with that, we want to help you to create a vision and a strategy. So where is it you're heading, and what is the strategy? So are you going to take that sailboat, or are you rather choosing to go by car or by helicopter or whatever it is? So what will be your strategy to get there? And maybe even to have some plan Bs in place. So if the boat does have damage, maybe then to not be discouraged and to know already what it is that you would do instead. And with the energy of that, with the great feeling, that vigorous feeling of like, wow, I can actually do this, then to feel that it's possible. And then to maybe look at what could possibly get in the way, because then those obstacles become more real. It becomes more. They become more. They get to a size where they are more manageable, and you have more energy to face them, and to really think of ways to overcome them. And that's where a good advisor comes in, and where a good advisor helps you to give you the inspiration to make that happen, rather than just simply hoping that you yourself can motivate yourself. It's hard to dare to believe that those things that are so meaningful for us can actually happen, because sometimes we want to protect ourselves, even unconsciously, from the disappointment of not having it. So that disappointment that is sometimes so heavy, so difficult to bear, that we rather not get in action than facing that disappointment. So that's why we need all that energy at the beginning of the process, because if we don't have that energy there, we won't be able to move on it. So once we do have the picture really clear about what it is that we want to do, that's where you want to build the financial architecture. I mean, you could start with the financial architecture, but in a way that doesn't make much sense, does it? If you start with financial architecture, then you're putting money plans in place, but you're not completely sure where they are really heading for, and where you as a client need to be. So we'd rather much more have an in-depth conversation about what it is that you really need and what it is that is so important to you before we even get to a stage where we put the money architecture in place to make it happen. And then, of course, it would also be great if your planner is aware of where you are actually heading. So when you have your reviews and the other moments where you reconnect with your planner, they would still be very much in favor of you getting there because they care, and also would be able to stimulate you and help you putting it into action and making sure that it actually happens. It makes for a better and a more fulfilled life. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of tea here. All right, so I'd like to put this in a bit more perspective for you. The traditional financial planning process connects your means with your plans. So the traditional financial planning process says, okay, how much money do you have, and when and how do you want to spend it? Or when and how do you want to grow it? How much revenue do you want? How much risk are you going to take? It's a very cognitive approach of your life, actually, because all that money is there to build you quality in your life. And this is, in a way, a very useful process, but it lacks the other side. And the other side is, okay, so what are your actual desires? And what is the intrinsic motivation that would make you being clear about what is on the other side? And then the strategic coaching, how do you keep on track in making that happen? So you can see here that the financial life planning really covers it all. Says, you know what, it's much more encompassing than just looking at the numbers. It connects your desires with your means and your plans, and it does it in a way that it's that it makes sense, that you can feel what it is, that in what way you would benefit from it. That means that in all of those areas, there's kind of a main question that's being asked, so main theme, and those themes are as follows. Here, with your means, it's usually that we will look at the quantity. So how much money is there? And in the planning piece, it's usually about, so when do you need it, or when is it used? And here it would be which product or which measure do you need to take to plan this in a way that you know when you can use which quantity. So that's the financial planning question. In this realm, you much rather want to know, what is it that really matters to you? And then the why, and this is not so much the cognitive why, but it's much more the heart's why, so the intrinsic why. So what would really make you feel great? And then in this area, it's more about how. So how are you going to make it? Are you going to do it? If we are in the traditional financial planning process, just looking at this side, then you can see how that is well, a great process financially, but maybe as a human being, I'm actually lacking something if I'm just looking at this side. I skipped through this one. I will get to these questions because these are, I guess, more important. If we're looking at that place on the other side of the river, how do you establish, how do you know if you're really acting on the right stuff? Well, there's this way in which you can ask yourself these questions, where you can start with, well, does this really have my interest? Am I really interested in what's happening here? And if the answer is no, well, you might rather decide not to give it any energy. Because if things really don't have your interest, why would you bother? The second question would be, if you say, okay, well, if it does have my interest, is it of any importance to you? Because again, if it's not important, yeah, well, probably you want to leave it to others. I mean, it's not important to you. If it is important to you, then the next question could be, so do you really actually have influence on it? I mean, there's so many things going on in the world where I feel they are really important, but my influence on it is so little that if I would concern myself over it, I would make myself completely mad. So if I have no influence, then yeah, you have to let go. Or you have to make sure that you have a real good strategy to increase your influence. That could also be a good way to go. But don't leave it at having no influence and still being concerned, because that is never going to help anyone. And then last but not least, can I feel it? Can I really feel it? Can I get excited? Or can I get disturbed? Or can I get angry? Or can I feel it? Is there an intrinsic motivation for me to be involved in this? Because if there isn't, yeah, then all the previous things can be present, but still, if you're not invested in it, doesn't make much sense. It's kind of like how we ask questions that from which we are not really interested in the answers. Like, hi, how you doing? I'm not at all interested in how you're doing. I would be startled if you would answer, oh, well, I'm not doing so well now. I just lost my father and my job, and I'm now really in a depression. Okay, that's a bit too much, you know. These are questions that we ask, but we don't really mean to get a serious answer. And you know, the receiver of that question usually feels that. They know that this is not a genuine interest. So my question is always, or my statement is always, only ask questions that of which you are really interested in the answer. And if you're not interested, if you can't feel it, maybe you don't want to ask it, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help anyone, not you and not the receiver of that question. So that's the way the life planners are trained as well. So if you look at those four elements, you can see how there is this wide circle, the outer circle. That's the circle of interest, where you come first, and then if you get nearer to the core, you are starting to determine whether it's important. Then you get to understand whether you have really influence on it. And then last but not least, you really do want to know if you have passion for it. If what is on the table here is not in that wonderful place at the other side of the river, where you can experience what is so valuable for you, you might not want to spend time on it. It's probably water under the bridge. It's a bit of a waste. But it's hard to determine that just by yourself. So having a great conversation on this with someone who's skilled to do that can be extraordinarily helpful. Let me see how we're doing on time. Yeah. So looking at this picture, when you look at the red dot, what we often do is that we look at our present situation and we notice the negativity in our present situation. And especially again with the situation with COVID, there's a lot of that going on. So we look at our present situation and we know exactly what is all terrible and difficult and all the stuff that we don't want. And if you are concentrating on that, then what happens is that you want to escape that. So those are the arrows. You want to escape your present situation because there's all negative in there. And the trouble with that is if the only thing you want to do is you want to escape your present situation because there are negatives in it, and you do that with undirected energy. So you can see here the arrows go in every direction. These powers annul each other. So in a way, if you are just thinking about what is so rotten and difficult in your present situation, you will kind of gravitate to the center of your misery. And you don't get anywhere. In the life planning process, we rather want to look at the positive of a new situation. And instead of trying to get away from the negative, we want to create a clear strategy that will get you to a new situation that has real positives. Excuse me. So if you are dividing your attention and all of your energy to get to the other side of the river, then you are getting somewhere. And maybe you get another current than you expected, and maybe you get another wind than you expected, but at least you're heading towards something positive. And as a consequence of heading to positive, you automatically get away from the negative. So you really don't have to think about the negative. Let it go. Let it just be. Okay, well, there are negatives in our lives. Yeah, well, that's okay. That's a fact of life. Concentrate on where you want to be, and that will help you get there. You can see how when we talk about all these things, sometimes we do get a question like, okay, so when you have these conversations with us, isn't it quite like being in therapy? Which always makes me laugh a bit, because when I look at it, I want to point at this picture where I say, well, when you look at the area of money and you look at the future of money, so how am I going to spend my money, or how am I going to invest my money, then that's the art of financial planning. That's the future of money. If you want to look at the past of money, by the way, then you would probably need to go to your accountant who looks back at, okay, how has your money been used in the recent past. If you look at the past of you as a client yourself, then that's where we would call it therapy. So a therapist would look back at the reasons why things were difficult for you in the past and how that got you to the place where you are right now. Whereas the life planner just wants to look together with you at your ambitions, at that place at the other side of the river. So the future, your future, that is inspiring and gives you a lot of energy and vigor to live a life that is really fulfilling. Let me see how we're doing on time. I want to share just one more short presentation. Just need to switch screens here. Bear with me. Yep, getting somewhere. All right, here we go again. So, looking at where we are, and this goes for many of us. Maybe even one of the benefits of COVID is sometimes that I hear people say that now they have a less busy life because they don't have to commute, and well, they can bring the kids to school, etc. So sometimes there are even benefits from being in an extraordinary situation as this. But nevertheless, we have usually, when we are looking at a busy life. And, oops, come on. I'm running to meet my deadlines. But isn't there more than this? What if I had all the money I need? I would relax. I would be free. I would buy myself all kinds of things. But isn't there more than this? What if my doctor would tell me that I had only 5 years to live? There's that question again. I would want to be with my loved ones more. I would go and see places. But isn't there more than this? What if my doctor would tell me that I had only 1 day left? What would I have missed? I would not have saved the world. And I would not have married the love of my life. I wouldn't have found inner peace. Aha, sounds like you need a plan. Yeah, but I can't do that. There are obstacles. You can see these are nasty obstacles that this frog has. And the advisor says, yeah, well, imagine all of this. How would that feel? So this is what it's on the other side of the river, you know. How would that feel? Use that energy. Yeah, I'd be on top of the world if I had that. So, could there be anything to stop you? And you can see already that with that energy, his obstacle is a bit reduced. I did not realize how important that feels to me. I will need knowledge to do this. And a plan. My life planner brings out the best in me. I will make it work. Now it's time to relax. My life is great, and I wish the same to you. And this is my wish for you as well. I would like to go back to maybe questions and see if there are other things that are on Jonathan and Dom's agenda.
Well, Louis, thank you very much for your thoughts, but certainly very thought-provoking and certainly got me thinking. A very interesting observation from Andy, I think. It's more of an observation than a question directly. He said, when we look at the migrants that come across Europe and try and get across the channel to the UK, they're seeing the bank on the other side and will do absolutely anything they possibly can, even get into completely unsafe vehicles to get to the other side. And his observation is, shouldn't we be thinking of those as people who are totally inspired, that have got a vision that they want to go towards, rather than perhaps the way we normally do think about them?
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly something to be considerate about. I mean, other people have desires in life, and to be considerate about other people's desires is a great virtue. Nevertheless, what you see is that sometimes people get much too fixated on the ideas of what their strategy needs to be to get to where they need to be. So sometimes people have told themselves so many times that they would need to take that sailboat to get to the other side, that they cannot seem to think of anything else anymore. And as soon as that opportunity is no longer available or seems to be blocked, they're devastated and they become inert and start waiting for that one opportunity that there will be to get to the other side by that boat, because that's the only thing they could think of. So I think that is also a duty of the life planner to help clients to look at, so what would that quality be? And what are ways in which you can experience that quality? Because very often there are so many more strategies to get where you need to be in life. And I would even say that even for those underprivileged, there will be opportunities. We only have to be open to them. We need to help them to find their vigor and their energy and help them to create possibilities in which everyone can thrive. So that's probably what I would like to say on that. So even if those situations seem pretty hopeless, I've noticed that people in the most hopeless situations were still able to get to the qualities that they needed. They just get it in different ways and in different quantities, but there's always possibilities. I've seen the most extraordinary things happen with the clients in the past couple of decades. Things that you wouldn't think. I can probably write a number of books on this, describing those kind of situations. It's so incredibly important for people to feel what it is that they need to experience, and then to find ways. And for us all to be mindful of the how great would the world be if we all would live a life in which we would feel passionate about what it is that we do right here. So we wouldn't have any outcasts. We wouldn't have any people who are depressed by the lack of vigor that they have for their everyday job. That would probably prevent a lot of misery happening in the world.
Thank you. I know you've touched on it a couple of times today, but we've had a couple of questions in around, in our current position, is it really possible to live a completely fulfilled life in every way?
I would say yes. Yes. I think it's possible for everyone. And that seems like a kind of a blind statement, but it's not. Fulfillment isn't that you always have your way. Fulfillment is being clear about what it is in life that gives you the qualities that you need, and then finding a strategy to work with that as best as you can within your possibilities. I sometimes give that example where I say, like, okay, so I was born on 2 legs. If I would have had 6 legs, I would have been able to achieve quite different things with them. But I was born on 2 legs, and I don't feel deprived of anything because everyone seems to have 2 legs. So I don't feel that there are too few legs on me. And that means that we all have limitations. There's some limitations we see and some limitations we don't see. And the art of life is to live within those limitations on the possibilities that you have. Possibilities only end if you die. Until then, you have possibilities, however small they look like. There's always possibilities to get to the qualities that you need in your life, but you need to be open to them. And if you fixate yourself on what is impossible, then you get depressed and you get a very difficult life. If you fixate on what it is that is possible, then all of a sudden there's a lot of quality in your life.
Great, thank you. Another question we had is, when we find ourselves in a place where we feel we're totally fulfilled, what would you expect us to be experiencing, and how do we know that we're there when we arrive? Or is it a place where you arrive at, or is it a continuous thing that we strive towards?
I would rather say the last statement is true. It's something that you experience in certain moments, in certain time frames in your life, and then all of a sudden we are thrown back into our struggles to get to more fulfillment. And that is, if there would be, again, if you have no ambition at all anymore, then you're probably not alive anymore, because this is the nature of a human being, to have ambition. And as long as we have ambitions, there's always a way in which we could maybe even be even more fulfilled. You can see that many people who haven't got a lot of money, they have this thought that if only I were rich, then I would be completely fulfilled. But if you then look at the rich people, you can see how they are fulfilled in money-wise, but they're not fulfilled with their lives or with the quality of lives. So, because there's different qualities that we all need to fulfill, and they are shifting, and it's a process. But what is true is that some people are living a life of frustration, where they keep telling themselves that they can never get what they want, and they are difficult people to be with. We all know these people, where you know that I have to go and visit this person, and you think like, oh, yeah, I know that whatever I'm going to bring up, he or she will know why it's impossible and what's so difficult about it, and why other people always did it. Living your life in frustration is a difficult place to be. So if you find the art of living your life in the hope of fulfilling aspirations, then all of a sudden you are already much more fulfilled.
Louis, one question we often get asked is that, you know, I don't live my life in isolation, and if I were to fulfill everything that I wanted to fulfill in my life, that might mean someone else, my partner, my children, whatever it might be, miss out on something because I'm out there pursuing my dreams, as it were. Yeah. How does one balance that equation in their lives?
Well, I think in general it's a misconception, because what happens is that every time when we deprive ourselves of our own passion, we get to be that nasty, frustrated person who is no good to his environment. So sometimes it's much better to choose to have what it is that you need to have in life, although it might have felt a bit egocentric or whatever stamp you would want to put on to it, because it would make that you would then radiate with passion, and you would give that energy to other people, and they would see how great it is to live in that passionate that kind of passionate life. Sure, there's always a way in which some people take too much and have no clue of what it is that they'll do to others, and waste things and break things and etc. Of course, that's not something that I would want to promote. But on the other hand, if we all, on our own modest scale, look for the ways in which we can be most passionate in our lives about the things that we do in our lives, if we were all passionate about the things we did, we would have had much less war and misery going on, because I would feel no need. If I'm happy about what I have in my life, I don't need to go to war. I don't need to have argue with everyone around me. So that build-up tension in society is because we have a very unequal division of the stuff that is around there.
Thank you. One question we've had is around how beliefs impact our behaviour, and our behaviour then creates our outcomes. And sometimes we get stuck in a cycle of of that don't actually lead us to where the place we want to be?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very difficult area, but where it is of course true that our beliefs make for 90% of our unconscious behavior. So all the things that I believe will, in a way, give me a kind of a clue of where I need to go with my life and what I need to do in my life. And as that is true, belief systems can be very leading. Now, you can understand that some of the things that we believe will be quite universally applicable, but you can also understand that some of the things that we believe might be a misconception or might be untrue. And if that's the case, and our behavior is led by these things that are maybe partial or completely untrue, then it can be quite difficult. Now, if you look at Stephen Hawking, in his book, he writes about relativity, and he says, well, two people playing table tennis in the train argue about the speed of the ball going over the table. And then at a certain point, they agree about what the speed of the ball going over the table is. And they know they're right. But then there's someone outside the train, and he looks at those people playing table tennis in the train. He says, no, they're both wrong. They forgot to add the speed of the train. So apparently, there's always ways in which each truth has a different way of looking at it, and might be vulnerable to a different angle. And if that's true, then I might have better done something else if it were for that person outside of the train. And excuse me. And if that's happening in a realm where I have a lot of influence and I lead a lot of people in a place where actually there's a partial and an incomplete truth at the basis of it, then a lot of people will suffer as a consequence. So this is something that is really very much in our human nature to want to create things that we can believe in, because that feels great. If we know how it is, then it feels much better than when we are insecure. So we want to create those truths, but well, in essence, they are usually not completely, entirely true, and that creates problems. So being open to the aspect of knowing that in a way, each individual has his own truth, has his own way of looking at the truth, is a great virtue. And again, this is a virtue that we put all over in our teaching to financial life planners, to help them to understand that when working with their clients, it should be about their client's truth rather than their own truth.
Yeah, very, very much so. Something we certainly would agree with you on, Louis. The final question I've got here is, there's two more questions. One is that we've all had the experience on the 1st of January that we set our goals for the year. And so the question is, and finding by the end of the year, we haven't actually achieved half of them. So the question is, why is it sometimes seen that goal setting alone doesn't help us reach that place of being totally fulfilled?
Well, there's a pretty easy answer that I can link into what I said earlier. And this is because the goals that people often write down on the 1st of January aren't really the goals, but are the strategies. So they write down as a goal that they would want to take that sailing boat. And then when there's a different current, or when the boat isn't available, or when the boat has a hole in it, they give up, because there wasn't an alternative plan, because they weren't really motivated by that wonderful place that they need to be, but they were fixated on the means rather than on the end And when you translate that to money, money in a way is just a means. It can't be anything else but a means. I mean, it's just a piece of paper that I exchange with you to get something of you or you of me. And so money could never be the object. Still, if you look at how people treat money, you can see how many people have wars over money, and how there's famine and all kinds of misery just simply on money, because then all of a sudden people forget that it's just a means. If you can bring yourself to go to the essence of what it is that you really need in your life, the experiences that you really need in your life, so you can feel the intrinsic motivation of that, if that's at the basis of what you set out to do, then the chances that you will execute on it are like, well, 200% higher.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louis. So the final question is, life is never a straight line. We often will see sudden changes that come along that throw us off course. And at times like this, how do we help ourselves try and remain on track and still moving towards the totally fulfilled life that we're looking for?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, well, don't exhaust yourself too much trying to be on track. You know, it sounds so logical that you want to be on track, but people sometimes make that into their fixation. Being on track is most important, but it's not the being on track that is most important. It's having a clear picture of where you're heading. That is important. And it's important to have that flexibility to go off track and to come back at your track and to reschedule your course and to meander in a way that makes the journey just as pleasant as the end goal, because then you have the most fulfillment out of your entire life.
Great. Well, thank you, Louis. I'm going to hand over to Dom now just to say a few words of thanks. We're very appreciative that you can join us today, and thank you for your words of wisdom. So I'll just pass you over to Dominic now.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks, John. Hi, Louis. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Louis. That's been absolutely fascinating. Am I allowed to ask one question before we go, though? Because this sure. Comes up a lot. And we've heard some wonderful stuff this afternoon, Louis, loads of wisdom that you've shared with us. So thank you so much for that. My question that I am really interested in the answer, and I really do want to know, is what do we do if we're stuck and we don't know what to do? What happens then?
Well, isn't that the moment where they come to go and talk with you?
Well, maybe, but it does happen, doesn't it? People do get stuck. We get stuck. I get stuck sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Not knowing what to do.
Sure, and I can tell you that I'm teaching this stuff all over the world, and I get stuck. I mean, we are human beings, so we all get stuck. And I think that the only thing that you can do when you get stuck is to look at, okay, so why is it that I think that I'm stuck here? And when you look at it, and when you really look at it, you'll almost always notice that you feel that you're stuck because you had a strategy, and you feel that your strategy is blocked. So you can't move on. So I'm in a dead-end street. I can't move on, and that's why I feel stuck. So the only thing that you really need to realize again is that there are always things, wherever you are in your life, there are always things that would give you that real sense of vigor, of energy, that they can wake you up at 3 o'clock at night and say like, hey Dom, we're going to do this and this, and that you jump out of bed and say, okay, yeah, let's go and do this. You know, because that's the kind of energy that really makes it possible for us to do the extraordinary things in life. And so if you feel stuck, then usually you have you're clinging on too much to that strategy that you thought of. Let go. Let go of those strategies. Realign yourself on what it is that you really need. What is this wonderful feeling? And well, realize that there's always other ways. And if you seriously, if you can't have that conversation with yourself alone, which is often difficult, by all means find someone who is capable of listening to you in that way and who understands that this is really what it's always about.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's so hard to admit the energy of the things that we really want in our lives to ourselves without having a conversation with a second person, I should say. Yeah, often we have buried those treasures because we don't want anyone to ridicule them or to step on them, or so it's hard to open our own treasures and to admire the content and to feel what it really means. So often in a facilitation that works much better.
Is that someone that you talk to? Is that what you mean, what we mean by, if you like, an accountability partner?
That could be the case. I mean, it's to begin with, it's someone who is able to listen to you with empathy and who is clever enough not to ridicule you for whatever it is that you want to share. Because however I look at it, it's apparently important to you. And that should be leading. So if it's important to you, then I should make it my assignment to stay with you and to help you to feel what you need to feel in order to get into action in a way that does get you unstuck.
Okay.
But the energy needs to come from you.
Yeah.
I can't push you to your luck. You will have to feel drawn to your own luck.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's not possible for someone else to want it more than you, is it? No.
Exactly.
You've got to want it the most for it to happen because you're responsible for making it happen. And you make it happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. Look, I think on that note, we ought to draw to a close. So, Louis, thanks once again for your time and your energy and your wisdom today. It's been absolutely marvelous, as always, to talk to you and to hear from you. And thank you to our guests today, our participants, our clients today for joining us. We do have one or two more events in the pipeline before the end of the year, and we'll get details out to you in due course for those. Otherwise, we'll close today, and we'll get a video up on the website and sent around to everybody probably sometime next week, once we've done all the necessary tech behind the scenes. So thanks again to everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louis.